So, a Minnesota poet walked into Greenwich Village and he had an acoustic guitar, and, well, he left uh, an undeniable mark on rock and roll that we still feel to this day. Hi, I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history teacher, and I'm taking you through Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, line by line, and we're up next with Dylan. So, when Billy Joel sings Dylan, he means Bob Dylan. The songwriter who turned, folk protest into, kind of a pop poetry, and then eventually moves on and plugs it into electricity, right? So he arrived in New York in 1961, and he was, steeped in Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl ballads and, this small club kind of storytelling. So in coffee houses and on records, Bob Dylan's plain voice and his sharp pen made the news feel singable. You had Blowin' in the Wind in 1962, and it effectively just asked moral questions in three chords. Then The Times They Are A-Changin' in 1964 just sounded like, just the bulletin for a generation. He sang at rallies, and he shared stages with Joan Baez, and he watched audiences discover, that a song could be editorial, it could be an elegy, it could be an invitation, all in the same verse. Then he changed the channel. In 1965, Bob Dylan went electric, and first on singles like Subterranean Homesick Blues, and then on stage, most famously at Newport. The move sparked boos, but also created headlines. But it also unlocked a new sound. This folk imagery over rock backbeats. Like a Rolling Stone in 1965 put 6 minutes of surreal narrative on top 40 radio. And then you had, tours with the Hawks, later the band, that pushed, volume and velocity while the lyrics grew denser, funnier, and even stranger. And then one night in 1966, a heckler shouted out Judas, and Dylan told the band to play it loud, a turning point that now feels inevitable. So what actually changed? Well, three things. One, there's his lyrics. He expanded what pop language could hold on to, politics, dream logic, street talk. And then when it comes to his authorship, he made the singer-songwriter kind of central, an artist who writes and performs and owns the point of view. The third thing he changed was, genre borders. After Bob Dylan, folk and rock weren't necessarily in separate rooms. The Beatles listened, country listened, poetry listened. After a 1966 motorcycle crash, he kind of stepped back. He recorded quieter songs and helped invent Americana with the band in the Basement Tapes era. The career kept on pivoting, country, gospel, back again. But the early 60s jolt is why his name lands here in the song. When we tie it back to the song itself, in one word, Dylan, it marks the moment when a songwriter let everyday speech and protest and surrealism, he let those things loose on the radio. And then it leads, acoustic. His acoustic ideals will then meet this electric urgency. The reason why Bob Dylan matters, why he shows up in the song, at least from my point of view, is that Bob Dylan shows how form changes culture. You can swap a backbeat under folk words, and a nation hears itself differently. He made the popular song a place for literature, for argument, but also reinvention. If you enjoyed this episode, if we didn't start the fire, leave a like, a share, a comment, a follow, any of the things, and that would be awesome. We're continuing on through the song. We had Dylan here, so next will be Berlin, and then we'll go on to Bay of Pigs Invasion after that. Thanks for taking the time to watch.